Hi, I'm Luke Nichols with the law firm of Nichols & Green here in Northern Virginia, and I'm going to talk to you about how to avoid getting a DUI. Now, first off, let me tell you what this video is not. This is not a tutorial on how to get away with crime. No, this is a tutorial of how to avoid accidentally committing a crime. And you may be thinking, oh, well, that's easy. Just don't drink and drive and you'll be fine. But you'd be wrong, because DUI is a complicated and confusing law, and many of my clients don't realize they've broken the law until they're handcuffed and in the back of a cop car. So I'm going to go through and explain to you how you can avoid accidentally being convicted or charged with DUI. First off, the term DUI itself is a real misnomer, driving under the influence. Well, guess what? You can be convicted without driving. Here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, operating a motor vehicle is all it takes to be guilty of DUI. And operation simply requires you to have the keys in the ignition and to be somewhere near the driver's seat. So if you're sitting in a car that's parked with the engine off and none of the electrical on and the keys are in the ignition, you're sitting there, you're guilty, okay? Additionally, there's some gray areas. So if you have a push button start on your car, where you have a fob or keys in your pocket and then you can just push a button to start your car, and if you're sitting in the driver's seat with the keys in your pocket and the car off, you may be committing a crime in the state of Virginia if you're intoxicated. If you've been drinking and you know you shouldn't be driving, don't be anywhere near the driver's seat and don't be anywhere near the keys. Otherwise, you're putting yourself at risk. And we see this problem all the time with people who go drinking or go to a party, they have too much and they go, you know what, I shouldn't be driving. I'm just gonna hang out in my car until my ride shows up. And they're just sitting in their car waiting for their ride to show up, and here comes the police. Another thing that's a real misnomer is people think drunk driving means driving while you're drunk. That's not true. You can be guilty of DUI even if you're not drunk. In the state of Virginia and many other places as well, there's two ways to be guilty of a DUI. Either you're over the legal limit or you're impaired. So if you're not impaired but over the legal limit, you're still guilty. So a driver that's safe to drive, that's sober, that feels fine, if they're over the legal limit, they're still guilty. And the problem is, no one really knows what the legal limit feels like. The legal limit's 0.08, we all kind of know that, but what does that mean? And it means different things to different people. Some people can really handle a lot of alcohol, and they can drink a lot of alcohol and be just fine, and other people can't. And 0.08 generally does mean you're intoxicated for an average person, but we're not all average people. So that's a real problem. The problem with the legal limit is that none of us really know what 0.08 feels like. And so we make this sort of personal guesstimation, like, do I feel okay to drive? Do I not feel okay to drive? And the problem is that as you consume alcohol, your ability to gauge whether or not you're okay to drive goes out the window. And you watch it as responsible people drink. They can recognize they're drunk until they get to about 0.07, and then once they get more drunk beyond that, their ability to understand that they shouldn't be driving and to be self-aware goes out the window. The alcohol affects them that way. Now, that's not everybody, but a lot of people fall victim to that they're very responsible drinkers when they're at a 0.04 and they're irresponsible at a 0.08. If you're a heavy drinker, if you're an experienced drinker, you can probably drive safely at a 0.08, but you're still guilty of DUI, even though you're safe to drive. I saw this once with a client who was at a 0.36, and they were able to drive fine and pass the field sobriety test at a 0.36. They were somebody who just had been a heavy drinker their entire lives, and they could do that, but it's still a crime. A real common DUI booby trap is medications. People don't realize that any intoxicating substance can cause a DUI, even if it's legally prescribed or over the counter. A real common example of this are sleep medications like Ambien and Lunesta. People will have insomnia and they'll be tossing and turning, and so around 2 in the morning they decide to take one of their Ambien pills, but they've got to get up to work at 6 in the morning. So after only 4 hours of sleep, they wake up groggy on their way to work, they get in an accident, officer finds out they took some medication, they get a DUI. Another common example is when people take medications that interact in a weird way. So you take some medications, you have a bad reaction to it while you're driving and you get in an accident. Potentially you could be guilty of a DUI. Next to alcohol, prescription medications are probably the most common source of DUIs here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. If you're on any sort of medication that could potentially affect your ability to drive a motor vehicle, be extraordinarily careful when you take those medications, and make sure that you are not driving if you could be affected by those medications. And just like the bottles say, don't drive until you know how this medication will affect you, because you may have an extreme reaction, especially when you change your dosage or you start taking other medications with that medication. So you got to be really careful. One of the biggest problems with DUIs is there's a lot of ambiguity in our definitions. If you're under the legal limit, you can still be guilty of DUI if you're intoxicated. Well, what exactly does intoxicated mean? That's a loosey-goosey standard that means different things to different judges and different police officers. So just because you feel you're safe to drive doesn't mean a judge might not disagree with you and convict you. So obviously the best way to prevent this is to just never drive if you've been drinking or if you're anywhere near intoxicated. If there's any doubt, don't drive. But even then, there still can be issues. I've represented a number of people who were stone cold sober with no drugs or alcohol in their systems, and they still got arrested and charged. And the reasons for this is that the way we investigate DUIs is not always that scientific. The field sobriety tests that they do on the side of the road are only accurate if they're done by an experienced, well-trained officer with some good street sense. The problem is that an experienced, well-trained officer with good street sense can tell the difference between a sober and drunk person within the first few seconds of talking to them. So if you get an officer who thinks you're drunk, even though you're stone cold sober, this is somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience or street sense. And this is not somebody who's likely to do a good job on the field sobriety tests. So if an officer is investigating you for DUI when you know you're sober, that is a big red flag that this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Don't take his tests. Here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, if you're investigated for DUI, you have a right to take a breath test on the side of the road before you're arrested if one of those portable breath test devices are available. If you know you're stone cold sober, don't take the field sobriety test, don't answer any questions, demand your preliminary breath test, prove you're stone cold sober, and move on. Okay? If you had some alcohol in your system and there's a question mark about whether you're intoxicated or not, don't take the field sobriety test, don't take the preliminary breath test. If you've been arrested for DUI, the breath test that comes afterwards, or the blood test they demand, is not voluntary. If you refuse to take it, you can be charged with refusal and lose your license for a significant period of time. It's very important for you to remember that everything I'm telling you applies here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Once you go to a different state, the rules are completely different. And it can be very difficult to keep track of all the different laws in all the different cities and counties and states and federal jurisdictions. So the safest way, the best way to keep yourself out of trouble is to make sure you're never anywhere near a vehicle if you've had any substance in your body which could potentially affect your ability to drive. If, however, you've been unfortunate enough to be arrested for DUI here in Northern Virginia, please give us a call here at Nichols and Green at the number below, and we'd be happy to discuss your case over the phone or in person as part of a free consultation. If your case is outside of Northern Virginia, contact an attorney that's local to the area where you were arrested and talk to them as soon as you can. Often you can get a lot of reassurance and a lot of help simply by talking to an attorney over the phone. Thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful. Have a great day. Stay safe.